Is that the human everyone warned us about? They said never challenge an Earthborn.
I'm just here for training.
Attention cadets, maintain formation.
Somewhere in a forgotten archive, deep inside a galactic database, there is a file. It is old. It is dusty. Almost nobody reads it anymore. The file has one word on the cover. Asterisk asterisk Death World asterisk asterisk. Under that word is a single planet's name. Earth. For centuries, alien scientists wrote warnings about this planet. They said humans were dangerous. They said humans should never be underestimated. They said one day, this species would shock the galaxy. Nobody listened. Empires laughed. Councils mocked the report. They called it paranoid nonsense, written by scared researchers who never even set foot on Earth. But here's what will shock you. 3 things happened that no empire predicted. First, the humans didn't just survive their own planet, they were built by it. Second, when humans finally reached the stars, they broke every rule the galaxy thought was permanent. Third, one man, on one ordinary day, walked into a place that was never meant for humans and proved every warning right. Let me show you exactly how this happened. Long before humans ever left their planet, a group of alien researchers landed on Earth in secret. They came from far away. Their mission was simple. Watch the humans. Study them. Write a report. At first, the researchers were amazed. Earth was beautiful. Blue oceans, green forests, bright skies. But something felt wrong. The planet was too dangerous. The weather could kill in seconds. Storms grew without warning. The ground shook. Wild animals hunted anything weaker than them. Diseases spread fast and quiet. Most planets in the galaxy were calm, peaceful, safe. But Earth was different. Earth fought back, every single day. And yet, in the middle of all this danger, there was one species that refused to disappear. Humans. The researchers watched humans build shelters out of nothing but sticks and mud. They watched humans survive freezing winters with no fur, no claws, no natural weapons. They watched mothers protect their children from lions twice their size. They watched humans fail again and again, and get back up every time. One young researcher, still new to the mission, asked an important question. Why do they keep surviving? They have no armor, no poison, no wings, nothing special. An older scientist gave a quiet answer. That's exactly why they're dangerous. They adapt faster than anything we've ever seen. The team kept recording. Every human tribe they studied had one thing in common. They never stopped trying. When floods destroyed their homes, they built new ones. When food ran out, they found new land. When enemies attacked, they learned new ways to defend themselves. The researchers wrote their first official warning that night. It said something simple, but powerful. This species treats every disaster as a lesson, not an ending. Years passed. The team studied more. They saw humans invent fire. They saw humans build tools. They saw humans form groups larger than any pack of animals on the planet. Humans were not the strongest creatures on Earth. They were not the fastest. They were not the biggest. But they were the smartest at working together. That was the moment the lead scientist wrote the words that would later become famous across secret alien records. Do not underestimate a species raised by hardship. They do not fear failure. They expect it. But not everyone agreed. Back home, on the researchers' planet, leaders read the early reports and laughed. It's just a group of primitive creatures, one leader said. They can't even leave their own planet. Why should we worry? The scientists tried to explain. They said humans were different from every species they had ever studied. Most alien races grew up on peaceful planets, protected from real danger. Humans grew up in chaos, and chaos made them stronger. Still, nobody in charge took it seriously. The report was filed away, marked low priority, forgotten in a drawer for a very long time. Meanwhile, humans kept growing. They learned to farm. They learned to build cities. They discovered how to write, how to build machines, and eventually, how to fly. Every step they took, the researchers were watching quietly from a distance, updating their notes. By the time humans built their first rockets, the scientists on the ground could not believe what they were seeing. A species that started with nothing, no claws, no wings, no natural protection, was now reaching for the stars. The old warning was updated one final time before the researchers packed up and left Earth for good. It read, Classification, Death World Species. Recommendation, never engage without extreme caution. This species does not break. It evolves. That file was sealed, sent to the highest science council in the galaxy, and then it disappeared into the archives, untouched, for generations. Nobody knew that one day, that same file would matter more than anyone ever imagined. Many years later, humans finally left their solar system. It wasn't smooth. It wasn't easy. But it happened. By this time, the galaxy already had a system in place. Different species had formed alliances. There were councils. There were laws. There were academies built to train soldiers, scientists, and leaders from every corner of known space. One of these academies was called Valthari Defense Academy. It was known across the galaxy as one of the toughest training grounds ever built. Only the strongest species were allowed to train there. Only the smartest minds. Only the bravest fighters. Nobody expected a human to walk through its doors. But one did. His name doesn't matter yet. What matters is what happened the day he arrived. The Academy sat inside a massive space station, hidden behind thick metal walls and glowing red warning signs. Guards stood at every entrance, wearing advanced armor built from technology far beyond anything Earth had ever created. These guards were trained soldiers from powerful alien races, chosen because of their strength, speed, and battle skills. When the human walked through the main gate, everything went quiet. The guards stared. Some looked confused. Some looked worried. A few even reached for their weapons out of instinct, not because he did anything wrong, but because something about him felt different. Unfamiliar. Unpredictable. A warning sign glowed red near the entrance. It read, *** Earthborn, do not engage. Security Protocol 17 active. That protocol wasn't random. It came from the old, forgotten Death World file. Someone, somewhere, had remembered. The human didn't look scared. He didn't look nervous. He simply kept walking, holding a worn bag in one hand, as if he had done this 1,000 times before. Whispers spread through the hallway almost instantly. "Is that really a human?" one soldier asked quietly. "I heard they can survive almost anything," another whispered back. "I heard their planet nearly killed them 1,000 times over, and they still came out on top." None of them knew for sure if the stories were true. Most of them had only heard rumors. Legends passed down from old reports. Stories that sounded too wild to believe. But here he was, standing right in front of them. The Academy's commanding officer, an alien leader respected across many worlds, watched from a security camera feed. He had read the old Death World file years ago during his training. Back then, he thought it was exaggerated, a story meant to scare young cadets. Now, watching a human walk calmly past dozens of armed soldiers without flinching, he wasn't so sure anymore. He called for a private meeting. Every top instructor at the Academy was ordered to attend. The topic was simple, but urgent. What do we actually know about humans? Most instructors admitted they knew almost nothing. Humans had barely interacted with the wider galaxy. Their species was new to space travel compared to ancient alien civilizations that had explored the stars for thousands of years. But then, one instructor, an older alien scientist near retirement, spoke up. She had personally read the original Deathworld reports, passed down from the very researchers who first studied Earth. She explained everything. The storms, the predators, the diseases, the endless disasters humans had survived just to exist. The room went silent. "If everything in that old file is true," she said slowly, "then we didn't invite a soldier into this academy. We invited a survivor of one of the most dangerous planets in the galaxy." The commanding officer leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. "Then let's see," he finally said, "if the file was right." And with that decision, everything was about to change, not just for the academy, but for the galaxy's entire understanding of what humans truly were. The next morning, training began. The academy's programs were famous for being brutal. Cadets trained for hours in gravity chambers designed to crush weaker bodies. They ran through obstacle courses filled with real dangers, not simulations. Mistakes were not just embarrassing here. They could be deadly. Most alien cadets had grown up on structured, controlled worlds. Their planets had systems in place to protect them from extreme danger. Their bodies were strong, but their minds were not used to constant unpredictability. The human was different. On his first day in the gravity chamber, instructors expected him to struggle. Increased gravity was hard on species from calmer planets. But the human adjusted faster than anyone predicted. He staggered. He fell. But he got back up almost immediately, adjusting his stance like his body already understood pressure and pain in a way others didn't. One instructor noted quietly in his report, "Subject does not hesitate after failure. Recovery time is unusually fast." Next came the survival simulation. Cadets were placed in a controlled but dangerous environment, designed to test quick thinking under stress. Fake predators, sudden environmental changes, limited resources. For most cadets, this was one of the hardest tests at the academy. For the human, it felt strangely familiar. He didn't panic when the simulated storm hit. He didn't waste time when resources ran low. He moved efficiently, adapting his plan every few minutes as conditions changed. When a simulated predator attacked from behind, he reacted instantly, using teamwork with a fellow cadet instead of trying to fight alone. Some alien cadets who had once looked at him with suspicion now started watching him with curiosity instead. Word began to spread across the academy. Cadets from other classes wanted to see the human in action. Some were skeptical. Some were amazed. A few were even a little afraid, remembering the old warning sign at the entrance. During a break, one young alien cadet finally worked up the courage to ask him directly, "Is it true? Is your planet really that dangerous?" The human thought for a moment before answering honestly, "Where I'm from, nature doesn't wait for you to be ready. You either learn fast, or you don't get a second chance." The cadet didn't know what to say. It wasn't the answer he expected. It sounded almost too simple, but it explained everything they were seeing. Meanwhile, in another part of the station, the older scientist who had first spoken up during the officers' meeting continued researching. She dug deeper into the original Deathworld file, cross-referencing it with new observations from the Academy's instructors. Everything matched. The reports about human resilience, the reports about quick adaptation, the reports about refusing to give up even after repeated failure. It was all lining up perfectly with what the instructors were now seeing firsthand. She brought her findings back to the commanding officer. "The file wasn't exaggerated," she explained. "If anything, it underestimated them." The commanding officer studied the data carefully. He had trained thousands of cadets from dozens of species throughout his career. He had seen strength. He had seen intelligence. But something about this was different. "This isn't about strength alone," he said slowly. "This is about a species that was forced to become unbreakable, simply to exist." Outside the meeting room, training continued. And with every new test, the human wasn't just passing. He was proving that Earth's old warning label may have been the most important discovery this academy had ever ignored. As weeks passed, the human's presence at the academy became impossible to ignore. Instructors who once doubted the old reports now openly admitted they had misjudged humans. Cadets who once whispered nervously now trained alongside him, eager to learn from someone who seemed to handle stress differently than anyone they had ever met. But not everyone at the academy was impressed. Some senior officials, especially those from older, more powerful alien species, still refused to believe primitive species deserved this much attention. One senior official, known for his strict traditional views, requested a special evaluation. He wanted to test the human personally, using one of the Academy's most difficult challenges, the final endurance trial. This trial wasn't part of normal training. It was reserved for elite cadets preparing for high-risk missions. It combined every element used in previous tests, but at a much higher intensity. Extreme gravity shifts, unpredictable environmental hazards, limited oxygen levels, physical and mental exhaustion pushed to dangerous limits. Many cadets who attempted this trial in the past had failed. A few had been seriously injured. The senior official believed this test would finally reveal the truth. He assumed a species from a dangerous planet was simply lucky, not exceptional. He wanted proof, one way or another. The commanding officer agreed to allow the trial, but only under strict safety supervision. On the day of the test, nearly every instructor at the academy gathered to watch. Word had spread throughout the station. Even cadets from other training divisions requested permission to observe. The trial began. At first, everything followed the expected pattern. Gravity increased sharply, forcing intense physical strain. The human staggered under the pressure, just like every other cadet before him. But instead of stopping, he adjusted his breathing and kept moving forward, step by step. Then came the environmental hazards. Sudden bursts of extreme heat, followed by freezing temperatures. Most species struggled to adapt quickly to such drastic changes. The human's body reacted with visible strain, but his mind stayed focused. He used the training techniques he had learned since childhood on Earth, techniques built from generations of humans surviving harsh, unpredictable climates. The oxygen levels dropped next, testing his ability to think clearly under extreme physical stress. Many cadets who reached this stage in past trials became disoriented, making critical mistakes. The human slowed his movements deliberately, conserving energy exactly when needed most. Instructors watching from the control room exchanged surprised glances. This wasn't luck. This was strategy, built from years of learning how to survive with limited resources. Finally, the last stage of the trial began, a simulated crisis requiring quick decision-making under extreme exhaustion. This part of the test had the highest failure rate in the Academy's history. The human paused for only a moment, catching his breath, before completing the final task with careful precision. The trial ended. Silence filled the control room. The senior official who requested the test stared at the data in disbelief. Every measurement, every reaction time, every decision made during the trial exceeded expectations, especially considering it was his very first attempt at this level of difficulty. The older scientist who had studied the Death World file broke the silence first. "This is exactly what the original researchers tried to warn everyone about," she said. "Humans don't just survive challenges. They're shaped by them." The senior official had no response. For the first time, he didn't argue. Outside the control room, cadets who had watched the entire trial began speaking in hushed, amazed voices. Word of what happened spread quickly across the academy, and eventually, beyond it. The old warning sign near the entrance suddenly felt less like a strange rule, and more like the truth the galaxy had ignored for far too long. News of the trial reached far beyond Valthari Defense Academy. Reports were sent to galactic councils, alien research centers, and military leaders across multiple systems. For the first time in generations, the old Deathworld file was pulled out of storage and reviewed by high-ranking officials who once dismissed it entirely. Meetings were held. Debates broke out. Some leaders still refused to admit they were wrong, insisting the trial results were an unusual exception. But most, especially those who had access to the original research, understood the truth. The scientists who studied Earth centuries ago weren't exaggerating. They were trying to prepare the galaxy for something extraordinary. Back at the academy, life slowly returned to a normal rhythm, though nothing truly felt the same. Cadets who once viewed the human with suspicion now treated him as an equal, sometimes even asking him to lead small training exercises. Instructors began updating their teaching methods, incorporating survival techniques inspired by human history and behavior. The human himself never sought attention. He continued training quietly, focused on improving every single day, just as he always had. When asked by a young cadet if he felt proud of everything he had accomplished, he simply shook his head and said, "I didn't do anything special. I just did what I was taught to do since I was a kid, never stopped trying." That simple answer became something instructors repeated to new cadets for years afterward. Meanwhile, the older scientist who had studied the Deathworld file decided to write an updated report, one meant to correct the mistakes of the past. She didn't just focus on human physical resilience. She focused on something deeper, the human ability to adapt emotionally and mentally, even after repeated failure. Her final line in the report read, "This species was never meant to be feared. They were meant to be understood." That single sentence changed how many alien scientists approached future research on humans. Instead of viewing them as a threat, more researchers began studying humans as an example of resilience, a species capable of turning hardship into strength, generation after generation. Back on Earth, none of this was known. Humans continued their daily lives, unaware that somewhere among the stars, an old warning about their species had finally been proven true, not through destruction or conflict, but through quiet determination. The very warning meant to create fear had instead revealed something far more powerful. Humans weren't dangerous because they wanted to dominate others. They were remarkable because they refused to give up, no matter what challenges stood in their way. And perhaps that was the real lesson hidden inside the Deathworld file all along, a lesson every species eventually needed to learn. Here's the twist nobody expected. The Deathworld warning was never really about danger. It was about potential. The scientists who studied Earth centuries ago weren't afraid of humans becoming destroyers. They were amazed by how humans became survivors, then builders, then explorers, without ever losing their determination. That's why the warning was ignored for so long. Nobody believed a species shaped by hardship could become something extraordinary instead of something dangerous. But Earth proved them wrong. If this opened your eyes to how resilience shapes destiny, wait until you hear what happens next, when humanity's reputation reaches an ancient species who once believed no Deathworld survivor could ever be trusted among the stars. So here's what we learned today. Earth was once labeled a Deathworld, a planet considered too dangerous to ignore. For centuries, that warning sat forgotten in an old file, dismissed by leaders who never understood what it truly meant. But when one human walked into Valthari Defense Academy, that old warning finally made sense. Humans weren't dangerous because of strength or weapons. They were remarkable because they never stopped adapting, never stopped trying, no matter how hard life became. If this story gave you chills, or made you proud to be human, hit that like button right now. It helps this channel grow, and it helps more people discover stories just like this one. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications, because next week, we're diving into an even bigger story about humanity's first real conflict among the stars, one that changes everything we think we know about first contact. Before you go, I want to ask you something. If you were the human walking into that academy, surrounded by strangers and warning signs, what would you have done first? Drop your answer in the comments. I read every single one.